Who's ready for their after lunch nap? Anybody? Oh man, this might be it. You and I might be taking it together, okay? I might just have to take a nap here. Okay. We're good. No judgment. Yep, exact. Man, I don't. I fell asleep and I'm the kind of, I am go, go, go. When I sit, I'm gone. I mean, that is it. I'm done. So the fact that you guys stay awake for any of this talking is impressive to me. I just want you to know, okay? Very, very impressive. Oh, paper airplanes. I love it. Oh, something so simple. We were trying to teach the kids, by the way, if you missed it, how to make a paper airplane. And if you went out there, you could see they go really far. And we just teach the kids that an ordinary object like a piece of paper, if it's properly prepared, folded correctly, and then properly motivated, ordinary objects properly motivated and properly prepared can go a long ways, just like ordinary kids. If they get properly prepared, do their schoolwork, do their homework, whatever, obey mom and dad, and then get properly motivated, that's usually a belt or 2x4 or something like that, they can go a long ways in life. So I want to just encourage them to be properly prepared and properly motivated in life. I think I should do a review with you guys because I'm wondering, those of you that aren't taking notes, how you're really doing with remembering this stuff. Okay, I got to be honest. I'm like, all right, how much is actually going in and staying in versus, oh yeah, it was neat. What'd you say? I don't know. It was neat. I don't know what he said. But I'm just going to assume that this is the best audience I've ever had and you haven't forgotten anything that I've said, okay? We'll just move right on past the whole review. Sound good? Okay, good. Good idea. Was it really a global flood? So the reason I talk about this is because when people scoff at the Bible, they usually attack the first 11 chapters of Genesis. They go after chapter 1, creation, all the way through chapter 6, 7, 8, the flood, all the way through chapter 11, the Tower of Babel and the scattering of people. Now, chapters 1 through 11 of Genesis are where we get every major doctrine of the Bible. Every major doctrine of the Bible, I'll show you, come from Genesis 1 through 11. That's where they come from. I just did a show, by the way, with Ken Ham a couple months ago. Are the answers really in Genesis? You have to go watch that episode. It's so good as we tackle every worldview issue, every cultural issue we're facing today. And the answer is all the way back in Genesis. Whether it's marriage or LGBT, now it's LGB, drop the T because they got that whole confusion because, well, the T's that are women, the L's don't want to get with the T's that call themselves women because they're calling, anyway, it's just a big crazy thing. But so whatever issue it is, it's answered in Genesis. Genesis is where we get the foundation. I came across a kind of a cool picture I thought I should throw up here. What do you guys think about that one right there? Is that kind of cool? Aww, look at you go, guys. This is so cute. Last year, too fun. So remind me, guys, we got to get another picture with us kids, okay? All of us, just us kids, okay? Just us kids. Love doing what I do. I'll go to universities. I love this, man. Go to universities and set up a tabling event. Usually I do that with Campus Crusade for Christ, not always, but usually with them, and they'll let me do a tabling event. I'll just set up a table and just say, hey, God created the heavens and the earth. Prove me wrong. And I'll sit there and talk to them, or I'll put up a table that said, God created you. Let's talk about it, or something. I was talking with a kid named Luca, and this kid stuck out in my mind because he sat down to talk with me, and as the conversation unfolded, he's a freshman there. He said, I'm an atheist. I said, why are you an atheist? He said, well, I was at the school that Nicholas Cruz shot up there in Florida, killing 17 of my students. He said, and I was there that day, and I was praying for God to save me. Yeah, and I'm sitting there like, well, here you are. Like, well, what do you know about this? And he said, yeah. I said, well, you're sitting right here in front of me. He said, yeah, but God didn't save all my friends. And I said, Luca, you're now saying that you accept atheism as true. Why would you run to a worldview that cannot make sense of the pain that you feel in your soul? Because if atheism is true, there's nothing wrong with shooting up a school. People may not like it. They may do something to me because of it, but there's nothing wrong with it. It just happens. I mean, when the lion eats the gazelle, okay, that just happens. When whatever it is, when the bacteria take over and eat something or cause a virus in an animal's mind, or you look at the world of nature today and you're like, man, it seems like there's a whole lot of kill or be killed out there. And you're adopting a kill or be killed worldview while you're upset that somebody killed? That doesn't make sense. You can't be upset at somebody killing when you have a kill or be killed worldview. That doesn't fit. It doesn't work. It doesn't line up. I said, really, the truth is you're really upset because we live in a sin-cursed world and people are sinners. That's what you're really mad at. You're mad because Christianity is true, that we live in a sin-cursed world. That's what's really going on. I remember talking to this girl. I won't show you the clip, but I mean, I sat there and I said, hey, she said, the Muslims are pacifists. They're not extremists. I'm like, wow, we're talking about Islam. And I'm going, to be consistent with Islam, you would become an extremist. To be consistent with Christianity, you would become somebody who loves with great love, with a Christ-like love. You look at the extremes, anyway, just conversations, she just contradicted herself one time after another. It made me feel sorry for the kids out there. I really do. I feel sorry for the lack of thinking, the lack of ability to process a rational thought. Now, my goal as a ministry is to share the gospel, first and foremost. We want to make it easy for people to share the gospel. We came up with a kind of a unique way a couple of 2 years ago now, 2.5 years ago now. We came up with this. Did I show you guys this last time? Yeah. I'm telling you what, man. I buy coffees all the time for people. Where's my coffee cards? We got our new cards all of them have the QR code on the back, so it makes it a little bit easier. But I buy coffees for people all over. At the airport yesterday morning, I went to where I was going to eat before I got on the plane. I'm at this restaurant. I said, hey, can I buy the next 20 cups of coffee that you serve? She said, yeah. I said, I do a little social experiment. All I want you to do is, they can order whatever they want, but as far as the coffee, I want to pay for that, the next 20 cups. And can you just say, somebody purchased your coffee and asked me to give this to you? She said, yeah, I'll do that. So $60 for 20 cups of coffee. I gave her a $20 tip to say thank you. So it cost me $80 to share the gospel with 20 people. Maybe more. Maybe they'll pass it on. I don't know. But I'm like, what an easy way, expensive can be, especially if you go to Starbucks. Trust me, did that. This is like, I do this all the time. I'll go to restaurants, especially the old mom and pop shops where the coffee is still $1.85. It's not all that good, but it's only $1.85, so I'm thankful. They're serving Folgers, that's okay. Man, I'll go, hey, can I buy the next 50 cups of coffee? And for less than $100 or $100, I can buy 50 people a cup of coffee. And I know once this is given to them, hey, somebody bought your coffee and asked me to give this to you. What are you going to do when somebody does that? You're going to go visit the back, the whybought.yourcoffee.com, and you're going to get a very simple gospel message. I don't know how many cards they sent with me, but whatever I have, you guys can have them. You can order them from our ministry. It's like $6 for 100 of them or something like that. But, man, just a way to share the gospel. We launched it when I was flying out of Portland, Oregon one day. There at Stumptown Coffee, launched Why Bought Your Coffee. And if you go to Why Bought Your Coffee, let me see where we're at. Here we are 2.5 years in. I think I got my website pulled up here. All right, so I should have asked one of you to do this, but I wanted everybody to see that. whybought.yourcoffee.com. We are currently at, wow, look at that, 20,399 cups of coffee purchased. People getting the gospel with coffee. I just love this. And I'm like, people all around the United States are doing this and sharing the gospel with people. It's just kind of a cool thing for me to see that number constantly go up and more people getting the gospel shared with them because of coffee. So just really, really neat. Since I was here, last time I also produced 2 little movies, Night at the Creation Museum and Night at the Ark Encounter. I called up my friend Ken Ham and I said, hey, Ken, I need a favor. You guys close the museum and the Ark Encounter down at night. I need it at night, just one night each. And the goal was I want to do a little vlog, just walk around there, by myself, no interruptions, and see how much trouble I can really get into. Well, a friend who lives in Portland who loves making movies, she said, Eric, let's make it a movie instead. I was like, that sounds like way too much work. And it was. But we ended up going there and we filmed Night at the Creation Museum in less than 24 hours. And then we only had one night at the Ark Encounter, filmed that in less than 12 hours, and made a movie out of it. And I gotta say, they're kind of fun. You follow instead of, I don't know, anybody watch Night at the Museum with Ben Stiller? Anybody see that one? Okay. So he was Larry Daly. I'm Derek Daly, and I go around and I'm doubting if this whole creation thing is true. And by the end of the second one, I'm like, oh my goodness, wow! I've seen all this evidence. And Tim Chafee, the other guy there, my sidekick, he is the one who who wrote the content. He's in charge of the content that goes into the Creation Museum and to the Ark Encounter. So if there's a sign or anything there, it most likely went through him. He wrote all that. So he plays my sidekick, and you can watch him. I got the DVDs, but if you want, you can watch it for free. Go to creationtoday.org/movies. I brought some of the cards here, those little cards that have that on there. You can have those cards if you want. I'm telling you, the easiest thing to give away. I'm on the plane yesterday, and I just reach into my bag. I keep them right here in my bag. I reach into the bag, and kids are walking by, and so I give it to the parents and do that. I say, hey, do your kids like movies? And I say it loud enough so the kids can hear it because, of course, kids like movies. And then I hand the parent the card. Hey, we make movies. I think they'd love it. You can check them out. And I just hand them that card. So a real easy way, and it has the gospel in it. So if you want to share the gospel with people using movies, this is an easy way to do that, or you can get them on DVD as well. But I'm passionate about sharing the gospel of Jesus Christ. I want people to know you really can have answers. You really can. The reason I do this is to challenge people's worldview and bring them to Christ, because one day every single one of us is going to die. You are going to die one day. Try to make it the last thing you do, okay? It's going to happen though, okay? You will die one day. And when you die, you're going to face the judge, and he's going to judge you. And I just want people to be ready for Judgment Day. It really is going to happen. There's no doubt about that. I think of a friend of mine. Paul Cornelius heard my dad teach years ago and went, wow, I want to do that. After being in the army, retiring from the military, he started a creation ministry. He made, I think, a 7-foot-long Noah's Ark model. And about a year ago at this time, they found out he had a brain tumor. And then a few months later, Paul Cornelius, who gave his life to sharing the gospel through the creation message, passed away. I told his wife, Dana, I said, Dana, every time I talk about Noah's flood, his ministry was called As in the Days of Noah. As in the Days of Noah ministry. And I said, every time I talk about the flood and I think about the days of Noah, I just want you to know I'm going to be thinking and I'm going to be proclaiming the truth that your husband proclaimed, that God is God. He is the righteous judge of all the world. And just in honor of him, I want to share this information. You see, we all have a worldview. We all have a perspective on life. And our goal is to see this world the way God sees it. That's the goal. How does God see this universe? What is your perspective on life? How do you see life? How do you see this world? Some people say the world, came from nothing. The whole universe, where did it come from? They say, well, it came from nowhere. That would be the evolutionary worldview. They would say it's amazing. A big bang made the whole universe from absolutely nothing. The humanist or evolutionary worldview. And this worldview would say that there is no God, there's no creator, there's no designer. We just got here by accident. Other people say, no, this world is incredibly designed. God's an amazing designer. That's the creationist worldview, okay? I haven't shown this to you except for a year ago, so I don't know if you remember. If you put the two worldviews on a timeline, this is kind of what they look like. Creationists believe that about 6,000 years ago, God created the heavens and the earth. 4,400 years ago, there was a flood that destroyed the world. 2,000 years ago is when Jesus Christ was here, and here we are today waiting for the return of Christ. That is not what the evolution worldview teaches. And you need to understand, these could not be more polar opposite. The old earth worldview truly was invented to try to destroy the Bible. It really was. The old earth perspective, the evolutionary perspective, says somewhere between 13 and 20 billion years ago, there was a big bang. Then nothing happened for quite a while. 4.6 billion years ago, the earth cooled down. And it formed a hard, rocky crust. And then it began to rain on the surface of the earth, and it rained for millions of years. Now you might wonder, where did the rain come from? Nowhere is where it came from, okay? The rain from nowhere came down on the earth, and it rained for millions of years. It rained so much that it created the oceans on the earth's surface. That's a lot of rain, okay? The oceans formed, and then the oceans mixed with the rock and created something called soup. That's the technical term for it, too. Soup. And then, this is good. 3 billion years ago, lightning struck the soup. And the soup came alive. And then the soup found someone to marry. How you doing? And they got married and they had kids, and their kids had kids, but like some kids, they don't want to be like their parents, so they evolved. And they changed from the amoeba to the fish, then to the amphibians, then to the reptiles, then to the mammals. F-A-R-M, farm, if you want to remember it. Fish, amphibian, reptile, mammal. And then the mammals eventually evolved into ape-like creatures that eventually evolved into you. Not me, but you. Yeah. Humans, yes, ape-like creatures eventually evolved into humans. I don't buy that, but that's exactly what they teach. Somewhere around 3 million years ago, man evolved from the ape-like ancestors. Now, perspective really does matter. I love Gary Larson. I don't know if you like Gary Larson. That guy's brain, I don't know what he was on all the time, but wow, what a mind. Perspective. Boat, yes, I'm saved. Land, hallelujah, at last. What you see depends on your perspective. Do you have the right perspective? Here's the right perspective. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. The Bible says, this is in Exodus, this is in the 10 Commandments, where God wrote this originally, the first time it was written with God's own finger onto a rock. He did not stutter at all. It was very, very clear. He said, 4 in 6 days the Lord made heaven and earth, the sea, and all that in them is. If we're still going to question the 6 days, we got to go back to Exodus and go, it's not just in Genesis, it's in Exodus. Hebrews talks about the seventh day. Jesus talks about it being a literal time period in Genesis. But in 6 days, God made everything, all that in them is. In Matthew chapter 19, verse 4, is where we get Jesus saying, have you not read that he which made them at the beginning made them male and female? Mark 10:6 says the same thing. It says, look, this is why a man leaves his father and mother and cleaves to his wife, and the two shall be one flesh. Mark 10:6, same thing. From the beginning of the creation, God made them male and female. Did you know the very idea of marriage is found in the book of Genesis? Hey, think about it. I'm not trying to be gross or rude in a church building here, but if evolution is true, what is the point of life? Somebody just go ahead and say it. To pass on your genes, your genetic information. That's it. That is the point of life. Ultimately, that's not any real purpose because there's no reason for that, because whether we exist or not doesn't really matter in the evolutionary worldview. But okay, even if you want to get down to some kind of meaning, it's to pass on your genetic information to create children, to have children. Okay, some of you guys are doing a great job at that. Okay, all right. But if that's the only purpose, and we believe in an evolution worldview, wouldn't marriage kind of limit how far we can spread our genetic information, if you know what I'm saying? Why would we invent the very concept of something that limits how far we spread our genetic information if spreading our genetic information is what we're supposed to be doing? Marriage doesn't make sense in an evolution worldview. It only makes sense in a Christian worldview. And God did it that way on purpose because he said, man, I want you to have the best life you can possibly have. Here's the owner's manual. Guys, I'm telling you, here's how to make it successful. Yes, yes, yes. Do it the way I say to do it. Okay, these aren't to try to keep you from having fun. And it's amazing, man. Satan can't create anything. All he can do is twist and pervert it. So what does he do? He makes it sound like, oh, if you're just going to get married and that's it, and you're not really going to have any fun. Are you kidding me, man? Guys, Satan is so good at twisting and perverting what God has created, but he can't create, so all he can do is pervert. He's done that with marriage. He's done that with family. He's done that with music. Every area of life, Satan has tried to pervert away from what God originally intended. You don't get marriage unless you start with Genesis. So if you're going to call Genesis, because there are people that would say Genesis 1 through 11 it's not real history. It's just like an allegory. It's just it's poetic, or, we're supposed to just get ideas from it, but it's not real. Well, no, it's real marriage. Okay, how about this? Why would somebody build a crooked house? Is this Ripley's Believe It or Not? What's going on here? Why would you build a crooked house? What's the reason for this? Or do we have the wrong perspective? Maybe we have the wrong perspective. Maybe they built that house on a hill and they didn't build it crooked. Maybe they did it right. Maybe we just got to fix our perspective, right? How many of you parents wish your teenagers would fix their perspective? They just keep looking at it as like, I promise what I'm telling you is true, dude. Please, okay? Fix your perspective. The Bible says, wherefore is by one man's sin entered into the world, and death by sin. The very ground that we're on is cursed because of sin. The creature was made subject to vanity, not willingly. We are under a curse. The whole creation is in bondage and corruption because of sin. The whole creation groans and travails in pain. You know the reason we have death and suffering in this world? We get that out of Genesis. That's where it comes from, the book of Genesis. You won't get death and suffering unless you start with Genesis. Well, why? If evolution is true, why do we die? Why do your cells will replicate a certain number of times in your body? So your skin, it replicates itself. Every 28 days, you got new skin. Every 28 days. Matter of fact, about every 7 years, almost every cell in your body has been replicated, and you're a whole new person. Some of you are a whole new person every 5 minutes or so, depending on your mood. But anyway, that's a different subject. You're a whole new person every 7 years. Okay. Why do our cells stop replicating? At a certain point, they go, I'm done. You know, scientists can't figure this out. They can't. Why do the telomeres get shorter and shorter and shorter, and all of a sudden, boom, you're done? How come? Well, the Bible can answer that, because sin is a curse on mankind. Sin brought about the curse. Sin brought about death on mankind. The Bible can answer that. Think of it like this. If we had a vehicle that every time we got in a wreck and got a scratch on the vehicle or something, the vehicle healed itself. It would be great, especially for some of you drivers out there. How long would your vehicle last? It'd last forever. Well, isn't it interesting? We get cut, something happens. I just cut my finger on a door the other day, and it's almost pretty much healed. Just got a blood blister from another job I was doing, from a jack, and it's almost healed. It looks like we were designed to last forever. But then something went wrong. That's what it looks like. It looks like we were designed to last forever. Unto Adam also, and to his wife, did the Lord God make coats of skin and clothed them. What's up with this stuff? I mean, not trying to be rude here, but have you ever thought about this? Why do we do this? Why do we wear clothes? It's cold. I'm in Florida. I ain't cold in Florida. Why do we wear clothes? You know, the very idea of clothing goes back to Genesis. Hey, again, not trying to be gross in church. If we're just a highly evolved animal, what's up with this stuff? Why? Animals don't do this. Animals do not wear clothes, okay? Why do we even wear clothes? You know, that's a Christian value. That's a value based on the creation worldview. That's something that comes from the book of Genesis. Without the book of Genesis, you have no basis for clothing whatsoever. None. Isn't that interesting? Every major doctrine of the Bible can be traced back to the truth in Genesis. So when I see people trying to undermine Genesis with an old earth idea, or undermine Genesis saying the flood never happened, I go, it matters, because you're undermining the very foundation of where we get all the doctrines in the Bible. Every major doctrine comes from this. So that's why it matters, because perspective actually matters. Here's what it looks like to the dad. Here's what it looks like to the kid. And here's what it looks like to mama, right? Perspective matters, man. Oh my goodness, perspective absolutely matters. What you see depends on your perspective. Well, we looked at this in the last session. Knowing this first, there shall come in the last days scoffers walking after their own lust. The reason people scoff at the Bible is never because of science. It's always because of, you were listening. Good, okay. And then in 2 Peter 3:4, they're going to say, where's the promise of his coming? Since the fathers fell asleep, all things continue as they were. Does anybody remember the word that we used to define that? Good job. Oh, science teacher. I should have expected that. Okay. Uniformitarianism, exactly right. Uniformitarianism, the present is the key to the past, and they're doing that. And then they're going to say for this, they willingly are ignorant. What does willingly ignorant mean in the Greek? Willingly ignorant means? Dumb on purpose. Yes, you got that. Okay, dumb on purpose. That by the word of God, the heavens were revolved, the earth was standing out of the water, in the water. What was that talking about? Anybody remember what that was talking about? Not the flood yet. When God originally made it, remember, it was covered with water. It was out of the water and in the water. Creation, exactly right. So that's talking about creation. Then whereby the world that then was being overflowed with water. What's that one talking about? The flood, exactly right. They're willingly ignorant of the creation of the flood and the coming judgment of God. The reason they're ignorant of creation is because if there really is a creation, that means there's a creator. If there really is a flood, that means God, the creator, can judge his creation. And if there's a coming judgment, then they have to live their life a certain way, and they do not want to bow to anybody but themselves. Scoffers are going to be ignorant of these things in the very last days. It matters because the Bible's credibility is at stake. So let's look at the flood. Did the flood really happen, okay? Anybody say yes? Okay, well then we can stop right there. Let's take a break. All right, we'll go into it in a little bit more detail, okay? Genesis chapter 6, the beginning of the flood, okay? The earth was corrupt before God. The earth was filled with violence. God looked upon the earth and behold, it was corrupt. Why? All flesh had corrupted his way upon the earth, okay? All flesh had corrupted his way. So God said to Noah, the end of all flesh has come before me. The earth is filled with violence through them. He said, Noah, I'm going to destroy the whole earth. He said, Noah, I want you to go and build an ark. Noah said, yes, sir. And then he told his 3 boys, Shem, Ham, and Japheth, he said, hey, boys, go for wood. Go for wood. Okay, so we know the story about how Noah built the ark, put all the animals on board. We're usually pretty familiar with that story. It was actually God who brought the animals, and what a cool thing. Has anybody gotten to go to the life-size Noah's Ark in Kentucky? Is that amazing or what? Oh my goodness. How many of you have not been there yet but want to go? Yes, I know you guys want to go. It's amazing to see a life-size Noah's Ark. You're going, oh my goodness, 500 foot long. This thing, you go inside and you get tired because you're walking so much around this structure. It is phenomenal. It's truly amazing. So they built the ark. We know that story. They put the animals on board. Now, some people still claim Noah's flood was not a global flood. It didn't go around the world. What this story is talking about is something that happened where Noah and all people existed at the time in Mesopotamia. So it didn't flood the whole world. It just flooded this little area where Noah was. Does anybody see a logical problem with this? What's a logical problem? Somebody help me out here. What's a logical problem? Yeah. Moving is a whole lot easier than building this big old boat and putting all the animals on board, for crying out loud. Moving would have been way, way easier. Okay, so some people, though, say it's just a local flood. Let's just go to Scripture and see what does Scripture say. I mean, literally, I'm having a conversation with Hugh Ross about the local versus global flood, and I'm like, can we just read what the Bible's like? Let's just read it together. And I would turn to these passages. God says, I will cause it to rain upon the earth 40 days and 40 nights, and every living substance that I have made will I destroy from off the face of the earth. Does that sound like a local event or a global event? Sounds kind of global. It says, the waters increased and bare up the ark, and it was lifted above the earth, and the waters prevailed, and the waters increased greatly upon the earth, and the ark went upon the face of the waters, and the waters prevailed exceedingly upon the earth. All the high hills that were under the whole heaven were covered. Does that sound like a local event or a global event? Oh, it sounds kind of global, yeah. 15 cubits upward did the waters prevail, and the mountains were covered. Does that sound like a global event or a local event? Sounds kind of global. And all flesh died that moved upon the earth, both fowl and cattle and of beasts and of creeping thing that creepeth upon the earth, and every man. Are we sounding global or local here? Global, okay. All in whose nostrils was the breath of life, and of all that was in the dry land died. Local or global? Okay, yeah. Just in case if you're not convinced yet, let's keep going. And every living substance was destroyed which was upon the face of the ground, both man and cattle and the creeping things and the fowl of the heaven. They were destroyed from the earth, and Noah only remained alive, and they that were with him in the ark. Local or global? Just reading the text sure does sound like a global event to me. I mean, it sounds like it was a literal global flood. Back to what's going on. Remember James Hutton, the guy that enjoyed his promiscuity with women? He's the one who came up with the theory of the earth in 1795, said the earth is really old. Yeah. And then Charles Lyell in 1830 wrote Principles of Geology. That book basically in 1830 just did nothing but make fun of the Bible. He called it ancient reasoning and feudal reasoning and said it had bad conclusions and bad logic, and he's just making fun of the Bible for most of the book. And that's the guy who invented what we now call the geologic column. Now get this. The geologic column, by the way, do you guys know what the geologic column is? How many of you say, yes, I know what it is? How many of you say, honestly, no, not familiar with the geologic column? Okay, thank you, but I was actually surprised. I did that poll on my Instagram. I was like, do you already know what the geologic column is? Most people don't know what it is, so I didn't realize that. The geologic column is all the layers of the earth put together, stacked on top of each other. So if you're ever driving through like a place where they've cut away the road, the hill to put a road in, and you see those layers, how the earth is layered, stratified. Well, if you were to take all those different kinds of layers of all the different kinds of rocks and stack them on top of each other, that is the geologic column, okay? So they take all the different layers. Some of them are hundreds or thousands of feet thick, and they bring them together. Here it is, like in a textbook, the way they would teach the geologic column. That is the geologic column, okay? They call it the geologic time scale. It's kind of deceptive, but the geologic column. By the way, does anybody know, where do we find the geologic column on planet Earth? Where can we find the geologic column on planet Earth? This, by the way, before you answer that, this is the definitive thing that proves to them the Earth is old. This is it. That's it. Where do we find, where do we find the geologic column on planet Earth? Grand Canyon. That is not correct. Sorry to set you up for that, but thank you for falling for it. Appreciate it. Where do we find the geologic column on planet Earth? Directly beneath my feet. It's everywhere. Well, not exactly. Mount St. Helens, no. In the textbooks and in museums. It's the only place in the world you'll find the geologic column. It doesn't, in its entirety, it doesn't exist anywhere in the world. So what they've done is they've taken these rock layers over here and these over here, and they found, okay, what mixes into what, and then tried to put it together. And when you stack them all up from around the world, you get the geologic column, all these layers. If it existed one place in the whole world, it'd be 100 miles thick. We don't have one geologic column that's all over the world. So they take bits and pieces, I get it, they take bits and pieces from around the world, and here's these layers and stuff. Well, bottom line is it doesn't exist anywhere in the world, and it's the number one thing that they use to teach the old earth ideas. Darwin comes along in 1859 and says, aha, he swallowed the idea. By the way, when Darwin went on his famous voyage, anybody remember the name of the boat that he went on? The Beagle, not the Ark, that was earlier. The Beagle is the one that Darwin went on. So he goes on the HMS Beagle, travels around the world for 5 years, goes to, what were the islands where he saw the finches? The Galapagos Islands, yep, saw the finches. What was the big deal with the finches? What was going on with those? The beaks, they had different beak shapes, and he thought what? Evolution is happening. Maybe this finch with a thick beak and this finch with a thin beak had a common ancestor. Well, he was right. I could even tell you what its common ancestor was. You know what it was? A finch. Yep. Very specifically, it was a finch, no doubt about it. But Darwin's like, well, because the beaks change over time, what if the ancestor of the finch is the eagle? What if the eagle and the finch had a common ancestor? A banana. Later in his book, he wrote, it's a truly wonderful fact that all animals and all plants throughout all time and space are related to each other. Evolution has to teach that one living thing, and they don't know how it happened, but one living thing came into existence, and that one living thing evolved into all the different life forms that we have today. And Darwin came up with that by looking at finch that have thick beaks and little beaks, or thin beaks. And he loved raising pigeons, the different breeds of pigeons. What he observed is what we call microevolution, and he jumped to the conclusion of macroevolution. Never been scientifically proven, never been shown scientifically. We still can't get dogs to produce something that's not a dog other than the Chihuahua. That's it. That's as far as it's gone. Seriously. Animals keep producing the same kind of animals. That happens over and over and over and over. We can't make it. We did the fruit fly experiments back in the 70s and 80s. They raised 70,000 generations of fruit flies. They thought, surely, if a whole bunch of generations pass, we can do all kinds of things to it, and we'll get whatever the fly is going to come into, we can help it come into that next thing, that next stage of evolution. After 70,000 generations of fruit flies, they got flies that had no wings at all. I guess you can't call that a fly, can you? It's more like a crawl. But anyway, they had flies with curly wings that would fly like this. Flies with little tiny wings that couldn't fly. All kinds of mutated flies. They never got an improvement on the normal fly. Now, what should they conclude if they tried really hard to make the fly evolve into the next thing and they couldn't get it to evolve? What should they conclude? Maybe evolution isn't happening, right? That's not what they concluded. They concluded, fruit flies must have evolved as far as they can possibly go. Wow, seriously. That's the conclusion, rather than concluding that fruit flies do not evolve. Okay, all right, sorry. So Darwin came up with evolution, and so now they're willingly ignorant of the creation, the flood, and the coming judgment of God. That's exactly what these three guys did. Hutton, Lyell, and Darwin, okay? And the geologic column, it really is, it's like the Bible for evolutionists, for a secular worldview. When we're teaching something, we say, hey, turn in your Bible to James chapter 3. Turn your Bible to Matthew chapter 4. Turn your Bible to, they say, well, if you look in the Cretaceous period, well, if you look at the Jurassic period, well, if you look in this is their Bible. Everything is based on the geologic column that doesn't exist anywhere in the world. And the geologic column is not evidence of millions of years at all. I'll give you several examples of that here in just a second, okay? What would the earth, by the way, look like if it had been flooded, if it had been covered by water in a global flood event? Does anybody recognize water erosion? Does that look like water erosion right there? How about this one? Does that look like water erosion? Look like water went across that surface? You guys know where that's located? Mars, that's exactly right. That is the surface of Mars. Mars has a canyon that would be the size, going lengthwise, a canyon that is almost the entire length of North America. Would make the Grand Canyon look tiny, okay, compared to this canyon on Mars. Yet there is no evident water on the surface of Mars today. We don't see water on Mars. But we know without a shadow of a doubt that was caused by water, even though we don't find any water on Mars today, at least above the surface. But yet we look at a planet like Earth that is 70% covered by water and has massive erosion features all over it, and we say, don't see any evidence of a flood here. Come on. Evidence from the flood is all over. If the flood happened, we should see fossil sea creatures in the highest mountains. If the flood happened, we should see plants and animals that are buried so fast they don't have time to finish eating. Maybe they're so fast that they're mid-bite and then they get buried in mud if the flood really happened. We should see rapid deposition of sediments. In other words, there should be one sediment layer, then another sediment layer, then another sediment layer. Not even time for erosion to take place between them. They're just flat, one on top of the other. We should see sediment that's transported over long distances if it's a worldwide flood, because with the moon, if the whole world is covered by water, the moon causes the tides, so you get high tide and low tide twice a day. Well, if there's no land to stop the tides would become harmonic and they'd get bigger and bigger and bigger. And so eventually, the tidal waves going around the world twice a day would just transport huge amounts of sediments for long distances. We should see no erosion between any of the strata right now. Guess what we happen to find? You go to the tallest mountains today and you're going to find sea life, sea creatures, clams. And those clams, kids, they didn't die under normal conditions. If you come to the beach and come hang out in Pensacola with me and we walk along the shore, you'll go, cool, a seashell. Look. And you'll walk along, another one. And you'll go get another seashell. Pretty soon you'll have a whole handful of seashells, okay? But you typically only find one half of the seashell. You don't find them together. Because when the animal inside there dies, the muscle that's inside relaxes. And so it opens up. And then that muscle decays. And you only find typically one or the other half of a seashell, of a sea creature. They find clams and mollusks and things like that up on top of the highest mountains, and they're closed. They're still together. That means they had to be buried. They didn't die under normal conditions and open up. They had to be buried where there was so much dirt they couldn't even open. And clams can dig their way out from 7 feet below the surface. They can figure their way out. That's impressive, isn't it? They get their way out from 7 feet down. There are layers of these clams that are up to 10 feet thick. Nothing but clams. 10 feet thick. And how are they on top of mountains? Remember our erosion rate example of the young earth? How long would it take for all the continents to erode flat? Or how long for North America to erode flat? Anybody remember how many millions of years? 10 million for North America or all the continents? 14 coming to mind? Anybody? Yeah. Anybody want to take it? Anybody? You're going to be right. 14, yes, 14 million years is correct. Okay, 14 million years for all the continents to erode flat. How can we have clams up on top of mountains? They say, oh, that's from when those mountains were down at sea level billions of years ago, and they slowly came up. Erosion rates would have eroded all the sea life from off the top of those mountains. There's no way those mountains can be millions or billions of years old. I don't have time to tell this story. Well, do I have time to tell this story? Yeah, I better tell this story. So one of the debates I did, this is on my flash drive, was with this guy, Bernie. I feel so bad for him. He passed away. He was at Portland State, down in Portland. And he passed away just a couple years ago. His son was in 6th grade at the time, and his son gets up and he asks this question. And the atheists loved it. They made a video of it. 6th grader destroys Eric Hovind or something like that. Eric Hovind destroyed by 6th grader or something like that. And it's this 6th grade kid saying, but we know God doesn't exist. And at that point, I just kind of backed off from him because I was like, okay, you're 6th grade. Anybody who calls himself an atheist that thinks knows you cannot make the absolute claim God doesn't exist. But boy, they cheered, oh, yeah, man, the 6th grader destroyed you. I'm like, he's saying something that you wouldn't even say and that you know isn't true. Anyway, so his son made a video later, his dad helping him, of course, and he's like, man, Noah's flood couldn't have happened. That's so stupid because, I mean, think about it. If the flood was so high that it covered the highest mountains, then it would have to cover Mount Everest. And if Noah was all the way up there, well, then you would have to have oxygen because you can't climb Mount Everest without oxygen today. Did Noah need oxygen on the ark? Did Noah need oxygen on the ark? And he's asking that question. So I was in Jackson Hole a couple summers ago, and I made this little video response to, did Noah need oxygen on the ark? Check this out. Hey guys, Eric Hovind here with Creation Today, answering the question, did Noah need oxygen on the ark? We are 9,000 feet above sea level, looking out over an absolutely beautiful view of the mountains and the valley in between in Jackson. Let me tell you the question that skeptics and sometimes even thinking Christians ask. They say, could Noah have needed oxygen on the ark? Because the Bible says very clearly that the water went 15 cubits above the highest mountain. Well, Mount Everest is 5.5 miles above sea level. So surely, if Noah and his family were on the ark, they would have needed oxygen to survive. Well, this question has two built-in assumptions that I think it's important to point out. Assumption number one is that all the mountains, including Mount Everest, existed when Noah got on the ark. And I just don't believe that's exactly what happened. I believe, as Psalms chapter 104 tells us, that during the flood, the mountains rose up and the valleys sank down. As plate tectonics were taking place, the thin spots of the Earth's crust sank down, and other spots, as they hit together, bulged up to form the mountain ridges that we have today. So I don't believe mountains like Mount Everest existed before the flood. I do, though, believe that they existed from the time of the flood on. Think about it. Today, secularists teach us that these mountains formed over millions of years. This, though, is quite impossible. You take some of the tallest mountains in the world, including Mount Everest or the Grand Tetons. Guess what you find on the tops of the mountains? Sea life, sea creatures, seashells, clams, mollusks. These things are discovered fossilized in the closed position. If those mountains had formed over millions of years, just the erosion that would have taken place would have eroded any sea life from when it was down at sea level, any of that away, and we shouldn't see it on top of the mountains today. This is excellent evidence that those mountains formed very quickly at the time of the flood. They didn't take millions of years to form. Second basic assumption. you're assuming that when Noah was on the ark and he was above the highest mountain, that the air was really thin up there. But that's a wrong assumption. Noah's ark was floating on water. Wherever Noah was at, however much water there was on the earth, he was always at sea level. He never went 5.5 miles up into the atmosphere. He was floating right on the water. So wherever the water went for the global flood, that was the new sea level. So no, Noah did not need oxygen on the ark. The mountains didn't exist before the flood the way they do today, and wherever he went in that ark was sea level. I want to invite you to learn more at creationtoday.org. So no, Noah did not need oxygen on the ark. So what about the geologic column? I got to go quick here. Let me just show you one more thing. Good stuff. I got to skip all this. Okay, sorry. I last summer had my first opportunity to go through the Grand Canyon. By the way, I made a movie on the Grand Canyon. If you want to go with me, by the way, I go every year. We'd love for you to go, creationtoday.org/Grand Canyon. You can get the updates on that. But we made a movie a couple years ago called Scarred Earth, where now anybody can go to GrandCanyonMovie.com and watch this movie for free. It's called Scarred Earth. I think I got some copies here if you want it on DVD. I don't have time to show you the trailer. But I would interview people one after another and ask them how the canyon formed. And then I gave them a couple scientific facts. And then I said, so what do you think? Do you think this could be the result of a flood rather than the Colorado River? And everybody's like, yes, that is possible. Okay, don't have time to show you the trailer. Well, this last, I got to get to it here. This is good stuff too. Sorry, don't have time for that. Last year, I got to go to the Grand Canyon, go all the way through it. Oh, side note real quick. People that say that it was just a local flood, but it still covered the highest mountains by 15 cubits. I guess that's kind of about how they imagine the flood happening. Oh man, come on, where is it at? I know I got it in this. Okay, here it is, okay. So, this past summer, I got to, for the first time, go all the way down the Grand Canyon. So normally on my trip that I do every year, we're only on the water for just half a day. So it's kind of neat. You got to go down this 2.5-mile tunnel down to the base of the Glen Canyon Dam that holds back Lake Powell. It's a secured area, so they search you and everything. And then we travel 17 miles from right up here off the screen all the way down around the famous Horseshoe Bend. So that bend right there, that's our boat. We're literally going around Horseshoe Bend. Really incredible time. Then we come all the way down here, right where these big giant cliffs end. And right here is a place called Lee's Ferry. And that's where they launched the 10-day raft trips. So this last summer was my first time to go and instead of get out of the water here, get in here and get out there, I got in right here and we rafted over the next 10 days all the way down the Colorado River. Incredible trip. It has some of the biggest rapids in the world. And it's awesome. Let me tell you something, man. It is incredible. This is what we did. Who wants to do that with me? Come on, oh my goodness. It is amazing. It is dangerous. On our trip, we didn't realize this till later, we saw 2 rafts come down that were totally empty. One had a deflated tube, and there's no internet, there's nothing down there. Find out when we get out that some of the rain had because water doesn't soak into the ground, it channels and flash floods, had come down a particular canyon, and there was a team camped at the base of this one canyon, and the flash flood waters washed a couple people out into the Colorado River. One of them was able to get back to land. The other one did not make it back, and she passed away, and they helicoptered their whole team out of there. It is dangerous. You are out in the wild. It's kind of crazy. We're setting up camp one night to go to bed, and lo and behold, there's a rattlesnake. I'm like, do we kill it? The guide's like, no, those are good. Our guide was not exactly a Christian. That's a good omen, man. That's a good omen. No, this is good. I'm like, ah! So I set up the cot, set up the tent, put the cot in the tent, and slept above ground that night. I was like, okay, we're going to get off the ground. I did not want to wake up with something in my sleeping bag trying to warm up with me. It's like, but man, an incredible experience. You got to go that. Well, okay, I tell you that and I show you that not only because it's awesome. By the way, the guys who do this, and I do want to do another one of these. Mine is not that intense. Okay, mine any age can go on every year, super easy. This one, not for everybody. Okay, let's just say not for everybody. What's the name of his ministry? Nathan Jones and thank you, Canyon Ministries. If you ever want to do a trip like that, Canyon Ministries is who you want to go with because they give you a complete creation worldview as you go down. A lot of times they go with somebody from Answers in Genesis, Dr. Andrew Schnelling or the like, and they'll show you some things that are just incredible. You get to stop at the Great Unconformity where you put your hand on Judgment Rock and a hand on Judgment Rock and Creation Rock right there. But another thing, I even did a whole show on this if you want to see the video of it, with Andrew Schnelling after this trip. We go through and they take us about on day number 8 of the trip. You get to a place called Monument Fold. Now think about it. When you start off the trip, you're all the way up here at the Kaibab Formation. You're in the water, and then as you go on the trip, you're going lower and lower into the rock. Actually, you're just getting a little bit lower. The rock is moving up around you. The land goes up, but the river goes down. By day number 8, you're way down toward the bottom rock layers down here, and they stop at a place called Monument Fold. By the time you get there at Monument Fold, you're looking, if you look up at the top, at the height of it, there's about a mile of dirt above you now. So you're a mile down where you started at surface level. You're now a mile down underneath the sediment, to the top of the rim, about a mile. So you're going down and you see this Monument Fold is really cool, and here's why. They stop and they give us a whole presentation. I wish I could give you the whole spiel, the whole video of it right here. I don't have time for that. But look behind us right here. This is Dr. Andrew Schnelling and Dr. John Whitmore. And behind me, you can see this rock curves down, and it ends up underneath here, straightening back out. You have this huge 2 90-degree curves in the rock. Oh, this right here is a death blow to anybody who believes the old earth worldview. This proves they are absolutely wrong. No questions asked. I shot a quick video while I was there with my cell phone. After seeing this, here's what I showed. Oh man, guys, I feel blessed beyond measure. Check this out. I'm here at Monument Fold. This is where Dr. Schnelling and other geologists, Dr. John, have been doing their research. And the research is coming back to show all of these layers are folded just in the same spot here. And from the Tapeats up above it, the Bright Angel, the Muav, they're all folded. And he is demonstrating that fold took place while they were all soft sediment, which means there was no millions of years involved in laying down these rocks. And this is right here. This is a death blow to the evolution worldview and to the old earth worldview. It's incredible. I just feel, it's epic. It's monumental to be at a place like this. Unbelievable. The research that they are doing right here is cutting edge because it's the first time we've done geology or major geologic research in a young earth worldview. Geology was born in an old earth perspective, and all geology has been done inside of the idea, well, the earth is old, the earth is old, the earth is old, the earth is old. Let's look at geology, it's old. Let's look at geology, it's old. They're going, let's look at it from the perspective of the flood. All 1 mile of dirt, every single different layer, all 1 mile of dirt bends. And there's no cracks in the rock, which means all that entire layer, all the different sediments, all 1 mile of sediments, had to be soft when it bent. and then hardened into the rock that it is today. This flies in the face of the evolutionary worldview because the evolutionary worldview would say the top rock and the bottom rock are 500 million years difference in age. Well, if the bottom rock is 500 million years older than the top rock, it would be hard, solid rock way before the top rock even got there, way before it even formed. And yet all of them, and there's 4 places this takes place in the Grand Canyon, all of them are bent in an S curve, a 90-degree angle curve. Meaning they were all laid down at the same time, they bent at the same time as soft sediments, and then hardened into rock. It is absolutely true that Noah's flood did take place. It did not take millions and millions of years for those rock layers to form. Without a doubt, it was a literal global flood. And you can find these bent rock layers all over the planet. You look up bent rock layers on Google, you will find these things all over the place. The geologic column is a joke. Now, I'm okay with using their names if we want to use that and say, okay, that's how they classify this layer, that's fine. But they're not millions of years different in age. They are simply not. Man, I wish I had time to go more into this because it truly is remarkable. Let alone, we got to quit, let alone the fact that there are now more than 270, actually 350 now, legends of a worldwide flood. Hawaii has a legend. The Chinese have a legend of the flood. The Toltec Indians in North America and Mexico knew about the flood. Lewis and Clark, when they were crossing America, said the native Indians would do an annual ceremony around a barrel-like structure that represented the ark that saved all mankind. The Babylonians have a legend of the flood. It's all over in Mount Ararat. There's a spot in Mount Ararat still today that's called Nu'u-Ngimshi. They call it Nu'u-Ngimshi. Does anybody know what Nu'u-Ngimshi means? Anybody speak that language? What's it mean? Yeah, no, that's, man, you guys are impressive. Yes, exactly. Nu'u-Ngimshi, 5 kilometers away. I don't have time to show you this video either. It's so good. A friend of mine, Jeremy Wiles, is going to that. He's gone to more than 40 different countries. Let me fast forward. I'll show you just a little bit of this, okay? Let me just show you a little bit of it.
In 2004, I started on a journey that would change the rest of my life forever. And it started with this question: how far would I go to find the truth? With nothing more than a backpack, a cheap camera, a little bit of money, I set out to find Noah's Ark in eastern Turkey and evidence of a biblical flood to see if the story was really true. Stories that they had with the tribes and
here it is,
that have a story of a biblical flood. That journey took me to these different tribes around the world where I lived with the tribes and I talked with the tribal leaders, and they told me these stories that they had, that they've carried down for centuries, generation after generation. And I went through China. This Chinese man in his late 80s, he actually sung the story of the biblical flood to me that they've passed down through generations. And I went into the jungle of the Philippines and met with a tribal leader. His 106-year-old grandfather told him the story of the flood, and he told me the story of the flood. I went to India and I met with a sadhu on the Ganges River, and he told me the story of a character called Nu, which in Hindi means Noah. They corroborated with the biblical story of the flood. Searching for the truth sometimes comes at a cost, but it is worth it. In the same way that Noah's Ark was sealed with pitch, inside and out, from the flood, we're sealed with the cross, with the blood of Jesus Christ. It covers us. It covers us from all condemnation, from all shame. He bore that on himself on the cross. He is our salvation. He's our spiritual ark.
There really was a global flood. Every culture around the world tells the story of it. James George Fraser hated God, hated Genesis, hated the Bible. But everywhere he went, he heard stories of the flood. So he wrote an impressive 3-volume set critiquing Genesis. In one of his volumes, he documents all the different legends of the flood that he had to come across. All I'm going to do is show you the table of contents. Each one of these lines is another story from around the world that he discovered about the flood. Here we go. And yet he said it was just a fable. It was just a myth that never really happened. And he did a great job of providing us with a lot of evidence showing us that it actually happened. Wow. Guys, there really was a global flood. Hey, you know what this means?
There really was a flood.
There really was a flood. That means, hey kids, God is very serious about sin. So many times we act like it's flippant. God is very serious about sin. God really is going to judge this world again. If you're not ready for that day of judgment, I encourage you to talk to somebody today. You need to be ready for that day of judgment. It really is. You are going to be judged by your Creator. Mom and Dad don't get to stand there and hold your hand. It's you and God. God is very serious about sin. Whew. Let's take a little break. I need it. I know you do, okay? And we'll start at, can we start at about 2:45? Does that work? And then that just gives me 45 minutes for the last session. Are we going till 3:30, right? 3:30? Yeah, okay. So we'll start back up here at 2:45. Any announcements before we go? All right, 2:45, we'll start back up right in here. See you in just a few minutes.